Okay.
Hey, and welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We're here with Deepak Shukla from Pearl Lemon, and we're going to be talking about SEO and voice SEO and personal SEO and all these things about search engine optimization and getting organic traffic and some of the things that you might have heard but not implemented and other things that you haven't heard before and should go implement right now. So Deepak, glad to be talking to you.
Ditto, Robert. Lovely to be here. Excited to talk about what is my bread and butter, pride and joy, maybe boring for some, but yeah, search engine optimization, how we do it, why we do it at Pearl Lemon, how to do it if you're a individual brand or a company. They're indeed often the same thing these days. So yeah, excited to talk to you about it all.
Yeah, and that is cool to think about that. You know, you hear about, there's Apple and Tim Cook and Steve Jobs, and you hear about Microsoft and Bill Gates, and sometimes you hear about how, like, Tesla and Elon Musk, right? There's the company,
Yeah.
and then the owner themselves are kind of just like connected forever to that brand. And then when you think of one, you think of the other, search for one, search for the other. And you said there that this whole search engine optimization topic, it's your pride and joy, exciting for you, but maybe boring for others. And that's totally okay, because those other people, they can go and research something else, but also, you and I as marketers, it's kind of our job to take the boring, mundane and make it exciting. And so what is your personal take on SEO, and what has you excited and jazzed up these days?
Wow. Amazing question. So I think that so my personal take, first of all, to answer that question directly on SEO, is that it's the modern day version of reputation management. I think that it's really, really important to control optics, to control people's perception of you. It's an expansion at its simplest level of a walking resume that works for you. So at its first level, and again, this relates to also what excites me, helping sculpt the narrative for your company or individual brand name is incredibly important. So that's, of course, myself as an individual, yourself as an individual, our respective companies, and what is it that is out there? How is it that people perceive us? What is it that they find upon first impression? So your searchability, can you be Googled? Your discoverability, can across the web, as people search for relevant keywords, can you be discovered? So these things I think are incredibly important. And then I think that what gets me excited about it, and it relates back to something that you've just said with Elon Musk and Tesla, Steve Jobs and Apple, about, I mean, the fancy word for it is almost entity SEO, but Google thinking about ultimately areas or bodies of knowledge as entities, and thinking about who is Robert Plank, how does he relate to his place of work, how does he relate to businesses that he runs, and therefore what is it that we can ultimately build into the Google knowledge graph. And that again is really just a term to relate to, demonstrate the type of stuff that again comes up when, for example, you search someone's name. Do they get that little panel on the right-hand side? Do they get the little social profiles underneath it? Do you see their articles, their books, their videos? What is your first impression of it? So these are things that for me are becoming more important than ever, because it's ultimately online that people turn to when they want to measure someone's ultimately, let's call it, background, history or otherwise, much more so than what traditionally would have been, for example, a resume. Then it was LinkedIn. Then it was potentially, to a degree, of course, video's huge, but it all begins with, oh, who's that guy? Who's that guy, Deepak? Who's that guy, Robert? Let me just quickly look him up, especially when you're given a reference. The first thing that, I or you or many of us do is say, okay, let me check this guy out myself. There's so many sales calls that I've been on as part of my agency where I look at the guy and I see in his eyes, he is Googling our company and checking us out on YouTube, checking us out on LinkedIn in parallel with anything that I say. And it almost supersedes everything that I say, because if there's anything that's not in concert, not in harmony, in synchronicity with the stuff you find online, we have the problem, but also the abundance of choice. There's so many alternate providers. So for me, not being mindful of your brand and your, again, searchability and discoverability online, it's oh my God, you're missing such a massive trick, I think, in today's day and age.
I agree completely with everything that you said. And like maybe even 20 years ago, I used to roll my eyes at this idea of branding, right? Because when, like, a lot of people, when they say branding, they're like, well, I've got these 3 shades of like blue and orange. I've got this color scheme and my colors are the same everywhere. And I think that's nice, but does that translate to you making more money? Or someone says like, well, I believe in this keyword and that's my branding. And you think about how like the way that SEO started was very superficial, right? Like keyword based. You have your meta tags. You tell Google what words you want to rank for. You know, you put your white background and white text, and you hide all these little keywords in there. I mean, what a far away we've come. And when it was only like maybe a year ago, I heard about what's the acronym, the EEAT, right? Like, and what's it, like expertise, authority,
expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So EEAT, expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So the new one was experience. That was the new one.
And like I still don't fully understand it. Maybe we can unpack that a little bit in a moment. But like what I got from that was, it seemed like, you know, when the pandemic happened, everyone was an expert, right? And someone could just make some blog post and say, well, if you drink water out of a blue water bottle, it'll cure COVID for you. And then Google was like, well, if someone says that, then let's look at all their other social media and look at what people are saying about them. And if it's like a viral doctor saying that, that's one thing. But if it's a botanist or a high school graduate saying that, then maybe that appears less. And you're so right that so much of our businesses these days are just checking other people out, right? If we're looking at some prospect, hire someone. Like you said, LinkedIn used to just be the resume. But now when I go to LinkedIn, I'm like, what are their posts? What's on their YouTube? How many comments do they get? How many subscribers? I'm kind of looking into that. And it seems like Google is sort of using their AI, their algorithms to sort of shortcut that. And if someone is prominent enough to be discussed by others, to have a Wikipedia page, all these things, then they'll rank higher. And it's like, it's harder to follow, at least for me, right? It's like, it's less clear about what steps are to be done, other than the best practices, other than like making sure that, like you said, that first impression, when someone searches you, they see all these good things about you, and you control the narrative and you're aware of what's ranking on those first pages of Google. And so yeah, with all this whole mess and all these new things happening, where do you even begin? How do you get your head wrapped around the EEAT and everything else?
Well, I think you've hit upon a really incredibly important area and reason for why the building of your personal brand with intention, because there's, of course, the accidental branding that many persons are engaged in. When you set up a LinkedIn profile, you don't really turn to it. You maybe appear on a podcast, but you don't think about it holistically and with intention. All of these acts contribute to EEAT, and the reason that it's now become more important than ever, and the reason it ultimately grew in significance post-COVID, was because during COVID, there was a significant problem of fraud happening online also, that meant that there were so many, ultimately, for example, spurious stores, web fronts, businesses that were being set up where there was no presence of EEAT that was attached to those sites. There were storefronts without notable owners. Now, these were at that time being rewarded by Google, perhaps more than they should have been. This led to a wave, and we saw this front line because we saw several businesses that were significantly impacted by ultimately as they came out of COVID, their lack of personal notability as related to their brand. It's very typical to see an e-commerce store that's set up on Shopify, on PrestaShop, on WooCommerce, on all of these platforms, absent any evidence of the people that are running it. You know, I don't know what's happening behind this store, but I'm going to purchase my hair clip on, my hair dryer, my hair care lotion, my whatever it may be. And that was a significant problem. And coming out of that, what's now become more important than ever is, well, how can we determine the authenticity of a lot of these websites that are popping up? Because more than ever, anyone can produce a body of content about anything and self-certify themselves as an expert. This plant or this bottle of water can, as you said, cure COVID. Why? Because I said it can. And that should be certification enough. If I blog about it on Medium, if I blog about it on WordPress, if I blog about it on even a third-party publication, if I pay for it, then all of a sudden we begin to create a bit of a self-confirming loop. So now with that being such a problem, this is where the experience element comes into play, because experience is about longevity and time in the game and historical data and reference points. And that is more difficult for anyone who's purposefully setting up to position themselves as an expert to falsify. So I can demonstrate expertise by throwing up perhaps 300 ChatGPT driven blogs about the benefits of water. I can demonstrate some level of authority if I just pay to be published on several websites talking about the benefits of water versus COVID. And then if I produce a couple of videos and I'm relatively trustworthy looking and seeming, well, hey, all of a sudden everyone believes me. But have I been doing that for 5 years? Have I been doing that for 10 years? And this is where EEAT became important. So that experience part is a lot more difficult for us to ultimately fake, if you will. So there's two parts, there's two sides of this coin, because of course I'll give people my view on what are the practical steps to go on the journey of at least establishing EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Experience, however, just like as we were discussing off air, Deepak, I think you emailed me in 2018, and I think because I was thinking, I know this name, Robert Plank, and as it turns out, we'd emailed you. That is very difficult to falsify. That there's an audit trail. So for those people who are looking to get started to help support the Google Knowledge Graph, that are looking to get that stuff on the right-hand side for their ultimately brand or personal name, there's a couple of areas that are quite notable. So instead of Wikipedia, there's Wiki Alpha, and Wiki Alpha is another open access resource that's much less subject to notability requirements and the editorial requirements of Wikipedia, but it is still used as a reference point by Google, because what Google looks for much more than it has historically is structured data. As you reference, where are these disparate parts that we can pull when we look up Robert Plank, and where are the notable sites that we can pull from to at least automatically pull all of these relevant data points about Robert to build his knowledge graph. And that might include, but not be limited to, the Amazon bookstore, if you've got any books, Crunchbase, if you've ever, for example, raised any money or you've registered a company. That can be podcasts, so that'd be Google Play or iTunes. That could of course be YouTube, because a lot of content gets published onto there. That could be all of the major media social profiles, of course, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, we've just discussed, having your LinkedIn profile updated, having your own personal website, and then semantically connecting all of it to one point in the pyramid, the apex. And for most people, typically you'd say, okay, well, I've just registered, or I've got robertplank.com or deepakshukla.com. And the way that we spoke about it previously, the self kind of confirming loop, the way that you're able to connect all of these individual assets into one connected structure to help support entity SEO, that, okay, I understand Robert Plank, or I understand Deepak Shukla as an entity in the SEO space because he appeared on Robert Plank's podcast. And I know that from Robert Plank's ultimately knowledge graph that this man is a marketer and he often conducts podcasts with other marketers. So Google is able to then to connect these bits of data, and those sites I've just mentioned, they are a snapshot or a smorgasbord of some of the sites you need to think about. And then it's a case of connecting it all via the Wiki Alpha, the structured data and schema markup you put on your own website, and Google's schema and what you can do with that continues to advance. And these would be the areas that I would look towards if anyone who's listening is interested in saying, well, hey, I want myself to appear on the right-hand side. Now, the experience part is, let's call it, element of notability. So that's where do it for a little while, be in the game for whatever game you're playing, of course, for a year, a couple of years, and that's going to really help give you that final push. So that's where the E in EAT came from, Robert.
I love it. And it's helpful to just experience your thought process, right? Like you're mentioning all these sites. I'm thinking like, oh man, Wiki Alpha and like a Medium blog and a WordPress blog. And it seems like the name of the game is to be putting out helpful content, but that's only part of it, right? That's only the beginning, because you say create content. And what do most people think about? They think, oh, okay, well, I need to like put these blogs on my own site. I need to make my own YouTube channels. But you're also saying an important ingredient in there is the link building, is create content, but put it on all these authoritative sites that link back to you, and do this consistently over time. Don't just say, I'm going to spend 1 week, I'm going to make 100 pieces of chat GPT content, put it all out there, and then say, okay, I'm done. Well, that might have worked in the past, but now Google is looking at this sort of long-term kind of work that you're doing. And if you did a bunch of stuff 5 years ago and nothing since, then that's not good. But if you have been doing it consistently the last year or the last 5 years, then you're building up all this information. And Google is saying, okay, this person, Deepak, he is always putting this out, and it's always being linked together for me. And so I can imagine that this advice that you're giving is good for someone to say, I've got a great starting point, right? And he's got me excited thinking about, man, I can post this over here on LinkedIn and get it connected over there to this. And it's a good starting point. But if someone does not eat, breathe, and sleep SEO and content and ranking and schema and structured data, they're going to kind of fall apart fast, right? They'll get a good jump start, but then say, I'm getting tired. I've got other stuff to do. This is not what I do all the time. I've got a real business to run. I got my own life to live. So what if someone says, okay, I've maybe put out some of the content, or you got me excited, I took some action, but I need to scale. I need some consistency. I need some strategy. I need someone to even stay up to date with all these many, sometimes weekly changes with these algorithms. And if they say, okay, I know I can't do it on my own, I need help. I need to look into Pearl Lemon and what you guys do. What would you say to someone like that? Like, how do they know if they're a right fit for your company, and what can you do for them?
It's a really great question. So I'd say that definitely there's the challenge of time. All of this stuff that I've mentioned, of course, it does take time, and it's important to determine the commercial intention that sits underneath that, because there's got to be a return on investment in even going through the process of building yourself into the knowledge panel, thinking about your knowledge graph. So, for example, for me as a marketer, it validates the fact that I am good at what I do, and it helps support my wider sales team. Say, hey, look at what Deepak's done. Look at what Pearl Lemon have done. We're in the knowledge panel. Are any of the other companies you're talking to in the knowledge panel? And it's a very much an example of proof in the pudding. So the reason for which we've gone to the trouble of figuring it out ourselves, because it's not really that well popularized in your typical search engine land, Ahrefs or Moz or SEMrush blog yet, is because it's a way to distinguish ourselves. So it helps our sales process. So the first thing broadly I would say to anybody is, what is the end game? What is the commercial, ultimately, reason to even bother? Because there's two ways you're going to do it. You're going to either stumble along and figure it out yourself, and that could be a matter of weeks, months, or years, or you're going to pay somebody, maybe a guy like myself. Maybe you're going to jump onto Upwork, to Fiverr, to a forum, to a group, to ask a friend, find a local agency. These are your options. So determining what the end game for appearing in a knowledge panel is super important. And then to that degree, one of the things that I'd always say in terms of the advice that we give for people that end up ultimately hiring us, or that people that are looking for a quick consult and to do it themselves, I'd say it begins in the initial phases. The advice is the same. If you've got a website, that's going to really help. If you don't have a website, make sure you update your LinkedIn profile, because there needs to be some form of structured information that relates to you as a person. And LinkedIn is a best first place outside of your website to do that. So I would say, in order or before coming to someone like myself, or any other agency that does do it or purports to do it, I would say that having a flag in the ground that you can plant is going to be important. I would say that if you're coming to us and you're a ghost online, it's probably premature. there is more work that's involved, and we can help but support you with that. But I would say in a first place, come to us at such a time where at a minimum, you've done your best to keep an updated LinkedIn profile, and or you've got plenty of material that you are happy sharing online. If you're looking to be someone who wants a knowledge panel, but is quite private about what you're up to and what you're doing, that's going to be real challenging. So notability, much like Wikipedia, is an important part of this. And, you know, for us, it's really helped our sales numbers, if I'm being honest, Robert. The reason that I do it is because it helps us sell and it helps demonstrate expertise. And that's for my sales guys, so they can literally on a Zoom screen share, say, guys, take a look at this, when they're saying, what makes you different from other agencies? And we're like, well, this makes us different from other agencies. So I'd say that these are the things that would be important to think about, or at least do for yourself. Alongside, for those who are watching this or listening to this on the rewind, all of those sites I mentioned, and then some. You know, I would start to navigate that journey yourself. And if you want to do as much of it as you can yourself, we could then come in where we get to the part of building the structured data and putting that all together on your website, because that's a technical implementation. So for some people who like to take the DIY approach, I'd say take note of everything that I've said, of course, read around it, and then come to us when you've given it your best effort.
I love it. And so you're mentioning there that there's a few items of low-hanging fruit that can easily be just fixed up. And it's a good advice you gave there, saying, well, as far as the things you want to rank for and the content you want to be known for, make sure that there's a path from you ranking for that to something commercial, something that leads to sales. And then also a good action step, a good piece of homework for anyone watching and listening is just make sure that you have a website and that it's been maybe updated at least a little bit recently. And then after that, look at your LinkedIn profile, and that might not have been updated recently. And, you know, that right there, that concept of looking back at old things and just making sure it's a little bit up to date. I've been trying to tap into that more, and I'm better at it now than I was in previous years. But I mean, I cringe when I think, when did I last post my Easy Articles? Maybe 2006, right? And then even like, you know, these really successful people, you think of like, you know, even like Tony Robbins or Oprah, people like this, they're like speaker pages. There's like a new design every year or two, right? And you go there and you're like, okay, this is someone that is not letting their business crumble and fall by the wayside. They're keeping it up. They're keeping things looking nice and fresh. And in these last few minutes here, we're talking, do you have any advice on how to tap into kind of being better about that? Of like, you know, I'm not sure if you've experienced this, but sometimes it's painful to look at some of those old posts or some of those old social profiles, and you say like, I haven't updated this in years. I'm afraid to look at it. So do you experience that? And how do we kind of adopt a better mindset? Is it a matter of like having a team such as yours, or just how do we just feel better about updating things?
It's a really great question. I think that having your profile or profiles, plural, managed is one way to definitely do it. In my view, the most practical way to manage the abundance, or depending upon perception, the level of work that's involved in generally updating your social media profiles and contributing to the platforms that your profiles are on, I would say have one profile that you directly control. So for example, in my instance, the profile that I end up posting on most regularly happens to be, and I'm terrible at this, but it happens to be Facebook. And what happens, because people would say, oh, that's surprising, I'm comfortable with Facebook. But then what happens is I have a team who'll go in, pull my Facebook post out, repost it and adapt it for LinkedIn from something that I've written. They'll then go and post it over to Twitter. And then potentially over time, for example, if I post, let's say, 3 times a week on Facebook, that's 15 posts a month, rather 12, 3, 6, 9, 12 posts a month. Over 6 months, there's 72 posts. That might be enough within that, with then some additional Q&A for me to turn it into a long form piece of content, or even something you could throw up on, for example, Amazon, depending upon the threads. So republishing and repurposing and reposting are ways to at least stay active, but it begins with there being one source of actually great content, which you as the marketer or the content creator or the producer need to be in charge of. So find out whatever medium makes sense for you. And then I'd say definitely turn to that. And in my instance, being practical, I've just recently begun doing podcasts again. So now, as an example, I'm on your podcast. It's going to come out at some point in the next couple of weeks. My team will go and try and pull snippets from it and turn it into YouTube Shorts. So having a team, I think, is important. And absent of having a team, I would say focus on one platform and try and grow that. And then as you gain some momentum, then consider the 3 Res, as I call them: republish, repost, repurpose, and see where that takes you.
I love it. Republish, repurpose, repost. And that's what's cool about you SEO guys is you have the catchy acronyms, right? Because if you don't have the acronyms just to make it fun and simple and almost gamified in your head, then you'll just get lost in the sea of all the things that you aren't doing and but should be doing and don't know you're not doing. And just that advice right there, just the way you put it, is like managing your social media platforms. What comes to mind there as far as managing is like a VA or a team just having a list, just having a spreadsheet or a document of like, here's my Twitter account, here's my LinkedIn account, here's my YouTube, and even just knowing all these accounts that you have and when you've last updated them is helpful. And as you kind of pointed out there, is that we all kind of have our favorite, right? And I don't know if it's like an age thing or an industry thing or a personality thing, or maybe some weird combination, but like there are people that are TikTok people, that are LinkedIn people, that are YouTube people, that are podcast people. And what's great is about what you're saying is like, you post wherever you're at, and then, transcribe the podcast, transcribe the YouTube, or take the written blog post. And that can be a video you make later, but you kind of post it at whatever your source is, and then you have a team just to look at that and manage these profiles. And even if you have some of these platforms where you don't post that often, like you're like, oh, I don't post on Instagram all that often, well, they can just go back and find one of your past posts, make an image out of it, put it on there. And even if it's not your main focus, you can be in all these places and still dominate the search engine rankings and have not just the search, as you mentioned, but also the discoverability as well. So, man, you've got the gears turning about all these things that are possible and all things that can be done just a little better, a little more organized than they normally are. And if someone out there in podcast land says, okay, this sounds great, he's told me about how Per Lemon can help me and what can be done, what's the website? What's the URL, the call to action?
Absolutely. So if anyone needs support with the 3 Res, republish, repost, repurpose, or the searchability, discoverability, Google Knowledge Graph, or anything in between, pearllemon.com, Pearl, like pearl, like a pearl necklace, something you wear around your neck, lemon.com. And you can find us and reach out to me or any one of the team. And at a minimum, you can of course get some even more advice to reinforce some of the things I've been discussing with yourself, Robert, today, if you're looking to get started on that journey, or if you're even quite a way into it and you're looking for a bow to be tied around the beautiful canvas that you're painting on.
It could always be better, couldn't it? And so pearllemon.com. And what's the meaning behind that? Why is it a pearl and also a lemon?
Yeah, it's a great question. So at the time I was searching for a name for what would be the marketing company. I knew that I wanted it to sound unique, irreverent, and not sound like a marketing company. I knew that much, but I didn't know what that meant practically. And then at the time, my then girlfriend, now fiance, she used to and still does wear pearl necklaces. And at that time, she was also introducing me to the world of using lemons as salad dressing instead of balsamic vinegar, instead of French dressing. So I just went on to GoDaddy.com immediately and was like, oh, Pearl Lemon, because I was looking at 2 names and I thought, oh, is it available? It was available. And then I Googled it immediately and I thought, there's a blank canvas here. This looks really easily quite brandable. And then later down the line, I thought, Pearl Lemon PR, Pearl Lemon web, Pearl Lemon this, Pearl Lemon. I thought I could do all these things with it. So it was also with that in mind. And that was where I first thought about the name back, I think, at the time I registered the domain, maybe 2017, I think it was.
Well, fantastic. And you have that blank canvas the same way. Who knows what a Yahoo is? What's Google? What's an Alta Vista? What's an Excite, right? You have the blank canvas, and then you can kind of own that space of what that keyword and what that branding is. And so with all that backstory explanation in there, it is time to go to pearllemon.com. And as people are typing that in our browser, Deepak, it's always fun to end our conversation by asking, like, what advice did you wish you'd gotten 20 years ago? And this is kind of one of those deep, profound kind of situations where, like, I mean, all the missteps, mistakes, setbacks, but then which led you, made you come out stronger. There's always those things you wish you'd known 20 years ago. So what comes to mind as far as what advice do you wish you'd been handed to you 20 years ago?
Oh, what a oh God, you threw me and both excite me at the same time with that question. So I'm due to turn 37 this summer. So 20 years would be me at 17 years old. So going back to me at that time, I think I wish at 17 years of age, I understood the power and importance of building or being consistent with building your online personal brand. I think that my future trajectory could have been very, very different had I have understood that all of the things I was trying at that time of my life, had I have documented more of the journey, had I thought about building one online almost central repository. It took me at about 32 years old, I think I began to understand the power of building a personal brand. And that coincides with more or less the time that I reached out to you, more or less back in 2018, where I turned 30, 2016. In 2018, I was like, I should really start figuring out this personal brand thing. If I'd have understood that at 17 years old, oh my, I think that, many things will change in time, but your name often mostly doesn't. So I think that that's something I wish I would have understood at 17 and not at 32.
I think that's helpful advice. Like Gary Vee says, like, document, don't create. And it's really overwhelming and overloading to think, well, I need to make content. I need to make a YouTube video. But if you just, recorded something, just showing something cool that you're doing, then you yourself will understand it better. And you can look at the metrics afterwards and see how well it catches on. And it might lead to other videos. So there's something to be said there about just whatever it is that you're doing, experimenting, building, playing around with. It only takes a few minutes out of your day to make either like a quick tutorial or screen capture, or even just being on camera, just like talking about what is it that I'm doing. That definitely adds up over time. And then you can look back and say, man, all those hundreds of videos and all those keywords, all those SEO, all the repurposing, it can all add up to something and, gather the subscribers. And, we all know of like either whether it's influencers or radio DJs, that people that we've kind of like in a way like fallen in love with over time, just because we've always heard them on the radio, always seen them on YouTube. So if you want to be that type of person or anything resembling it, then it won't happen unless you're consistently posting something. So something you said about consistency, which you have done and which I have done. You're almost episode number 1000 here. So we're both on the consistency train. And for those businesses out there that want to be consistent themselves, the next logical step is to go to pearllemon.com to see what Deepak and his team can do for you, what they can build for you. You might have already have some diamonds in the rough, and they can take that, make it better, give you new ideas. But doing it your own or doing it the way you've always done just seems crazy. You need a team to help you strategize and innovate and take action. So pearllemon.com is the very next place to go. We will see you there. Thank you very much, Deepak, for being honest and giving us some just really cool, amazing ideas and insights. I really appreciate it.
Robert, you're too kind. Thank you. It's a pleasure being on. And I hope to see you again sometime soon. So thank you so much.
Likewise, we'll do a return visit. Maybe not in 5 years, but very soon.